The great hall of Velmore had been built to inspire awe. Tonight, it inspired only terror. Seren stood in the center of the stone floor, iron shackles biting into her wrists, her bare feet numb against cold granite. Above her, 1,000 torches blazed from the vaulted ceiling, casting writhing shadows across the faces of wolves who had gathered to watch her die. The air was thick with the scent of burning pitch and something sharper. Fear, perhaps. Her own fear, radiating from her skin like heat from a fever. She had healed many of them. The elder's daughter, burning with fever that had nearly claimed her life. The blacksmith's son, his leg shattered beneath a fallen beam, now walking without a limp. Countless warriors who had limped into her healing cottage with wounds that should have killed them and walked out whole. Now they stared at her with hatred, and something inside her cracked. The accused will face the council. Lord Mavis sat at the center of the raised dais, his silver hair gleaming like a blade in the torchlight. His voice echoed off the ancient stones, cold and final as a tomb sealing shut. 6 other elders flanked him, their faces holding no mercy, no doubt, no recognition of the woman who had saved their children and their kin. And beside them, in the chair that should have held the Alpha of Velmore, sat emptiness. Where is he? Seren's eyes darted across the dais, searching for broad shoulders, dark hair falling across slate-colored eyes, the powerful jaw she had traced with trembling fingers in moonlit clearings. She searched for the man who had held her face in his hands and promised her forever. Rydian was not there. The charges are as follows. Mavis unrolled a scroll with deliberate slowness, savoring the moment. Seren of No House stands accused of attempted assassination of Alpha Rydian through the administration of poison. No. The word caught in her throat, trapped behind the panic that seized her lungs. Evidence includes a vial of refined wolfsbane found in the accused's dwelling, sufficient quantity to kill 3 grown wolves. Mavis held up a small glass container, its contents dark as old blood. Additionally, Lady Coruscant of House Thane has provided testimony that she witnessed the accused adding a foreign substance to the Alpha's evening wine. Seren's head snapped toward the left side of the hall, where Coruscant stood in a gown of midnight blue, wheat gold hair arranged in elaborate braids, her lovely face arranged in an expression of sorrowful duty. Their eyes met, and Coruscant smiled. Small, fleeting. A private cruelty meant only for Seren, a flash of triumph that vanished before anyone else could see it. She did this. The vial planted in my cottage, the fabricated testimony. All of it. The accused may speak. I am innocent. Seren's voice emerged as a rasp, scraped raw by the screams she had swallowed during 3 days of imprisonment. I have never harmed the Alpha. I would never. The evidence is false. Lady Coruscant, you maintain your testimony? Coruscant stepped forward, her movements graceful as a dancer's, her expression trembling with practiced emotion. I do, my lord. It grieves me deeply to speak against one I considered a friend, but I saw what I saw. The accused was in the Alpha's private chambers. She believed herself unobserved. I watched her pour a dark liquid into his wine carafe. Lies! Seren lunged forward, chains rattling, iron cutting fresh wounds into her wrists. I was never in his chambers. I was in the forest, in his arms, in the sacred clearing where he bit my hip and called me his mate. She could not say it. The claiming had been secret. Rydian had insisted on waiting until he had secured enough political support to present a common-born healer as his Luna. When the time is right, he had whispered against her skin, his breath warm and his hands reverent as they traced the curve of her waist. I will announce you to the entire realm. You will stand beside me, Seren. Nothing will prevent that. She had believed him with every fiber of her being. Her hand moved instinctively to her lower belly, where a different secret had begun to grow. A secret she had discovered only days ago, a secret she had planned to tell him tonight, after the council session ended. A secret that would die with her if she could not find a way to reach him. "Where is the Alpha?" Seren demanded, her voice rising with desperation. "I have the right to face my accuser. I have the right to speak to him directly." Silence fell across the hall like a shroud. Lord Mavis exchanged a glance with Corisanda that Seren could not interpret. Something knowing, something satisfied. "The Alpha has recused himself from these proceedings," Mavis said carefully. Given the personal nature of the accusation, he felt his presence would compromise the council's objectivity. Personal nature. He knows. Someone told him about us. However, Mavis lifted a folded parchment bearing the Alpha's seal. Alpha Ridian has reviewed the evidence presented and provided his written judgment. Seren's heart stopped. In recognition of the accused's previous service to Velmore, and in acknowledgement that no actual harm befell his person, the Alpha has determined that execution would be unnecessarily severe. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Seren felt something like hope pierce through her terror. Instead, the accused is hereby sentenced to permanent exile. She will be escorted beyond the borders of Velmore territory before dawn. Should she ever return, the original sentence of death will be carried out immediately. The gavel struck stone. The sound shattered something inside Seren's chest. "No." The word escaped as a whisper, then louder, building to a scream that tore her throat raw. "No. Ridian. Ridian." Guards seized her arms, dragging her backward toward the great doors. Seren's feet scraped uselessly against the stone as she fought with every ounce of strength remaining in her exhausted body. "I need to see him. Please. I need to see him. Ridian." The mark on her hip, the secret claiming bite hidden beneath her simple dress, flared with sudden burning heat. And through that heat, through the bond she had never fully understood, she felt something. Cold. Vast. Empty. As if the soul on the other end had been hollowed out. The great doors slammed shut behind her, cutting off her screams. Seren did not see Corisande turn toward a shadowed alcove in the hall's corner. She did not see the woman nod once to the hooded figures waiting there. And she did not see, high in the eastern tower, a dark-haired Alpha standing at his window with a cup of drugged wine clutched in his shaking hand, watching a hooded woman in a healer's simple dress being led toward the executioner's block in the courtyard below. The woman wearing Seren's clothes. The woman whose face was hidden beneath a rough-spun hood. The woman who had been paid to die in Seren's place, so that Corisande could tell the Alpha his secret mate had confessed her crimes and requested a swift end rather than the shame of exile. When the blade fell, Ridian's howl of anguish split the night sky. And 3 miles away, being dragged through frozen forest toward the border, Seren heard it echo through the trees. A sound so broken, so raw, that her own wolf answered with a cry of desperate confusion. She did not understand why he grieved. She only knew that the man she loved had signed away her life. Seren ran until her legs buckled beneath her. The guards had released her at the border stone, a jagged pillar of black granite carved with warnings in the old tongue. They cut her shackles, shoved her forward, and spoke their final words with mechanical indifference. "Return and die." Then they vanished into the darkness, leaving her alone in a wilderness that stretched endlessly in every direction. She had no supplies, no money, no cloak against the bitter wind that cut through her thin dress like knives of ice. Only the mark pulsing on her hip and the spark of life flickering in her belly. Move. You have to move. She walked for hours, stumbled through frozen streams that bit at her ankles, pushed through thickets that tore at her arms and face, fell twice, 3 times, each time dragging herself back to standing through sheer desperate will. By dawn, she found shelter, a shallow cave tucked into a rocky hillside. Sleep took her like a blow to the head. She woke to pain. The mark on her hips seared with heat that should not exist. Among wolf kind, a rejected mate's claiming scar disappeared within days. The bond severed, the body healed, and only memories remained. But Seren's mark had grown darker. The edges seemed to glow with internal fire. He rejected me. The bond should be dying, unless it was not rejection at all. She crushed the thought immediately. False hope was poison more dangerous than any she knew how to brew. Weeks blurred into months. She moved from village to village, never staying long enough to be remembered, her belly growing rounder with each passing moon. She survived on roots, winter berries, and the kindness of strangers who asked no questions about the haunted woman traveling alone. When spring began to thaw the mountain passes, she reached a village called Thornwood. Small, poor, nestled in a valley far from Velmore's influence. The people were human, not wolf, their faces weathered by hard winters and harder lives. "Please," Seren said, her voice cracked from disuse. "I am a healer. I only need shelter until the child comes." The village elder, a woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much suffering to judge, studied her swollen belly for a long moment. "What is your name, child?" In another life, she would have spoken her true name with pride. Now, that name was attached to accusations of murder, to exile, to a death sentence hanging over her like a blade. "Ren," she said softly. "My name is Ren. There is an empty cottage at the forest's edge. The roof leaks, and the hearth is cracked. But if you can mend it, it is yours." The woman who had once been Seren bowed her head in gratitude. "This is your life now. A new name, a new place, a new beginning." But that night, as she lay in her broken cottage with her hands pressed to her swelling belly, the mark on her hip ignited with sudden, searing heat. Through the bond, she felt something that made her gasp aloud. A presence, vast and searching, clawing at the edges of her consciousness with desperate, wordless need. And beneath it, grief so profound it threatened to drag her under completely. 8 months had passed since the night she became Ren. 8 months since she heard Rydian's howl echo through frozen forest. 8 months since she died to everyone she had ever known. Now, as autumn painted the mountain valley in shades of amber and rust, Ren stood at the window of her small cottage and watched her children sleep. Twins, a boy and a girl, barely 1 month old, their tiny bodies curled together in the cradle she had built with her own hands. The boy had a shock of dark hair, already thick and wild like his father's. The girl's was lighter, the color of honey in afternoon sunlight. But both had their father's eyes, silver-flecked gray, ancient and knowing even in infancy. Ren turned away from the cradle, pressing her palm against the familiar ache in her chest. They will never know him, and that is a mercy. She told herself this every day. She almost believed it. Thornwood had become home in the way that any shelter becomes home to a wounded animal. Ren healed their sick, delivered their babies, and mended their broken bones. In return, they left food at her door, helped patch her roof, and asked no questions about the father of her children or the scars that marked her wrists. She had found a kind of peace here, but peace was not the same as healing. The mark on her hip had never stopped its heat. Every night it woke her from restless dreams. Every dawn she checked to see if it had finally faded, finally released her from a bond that should have been severed months ago. It never did. If anything, it had grown darker, almost black against her pale skin, the edges tinged with faint gold. "Mistress Ren?" Tamsin, the miller's wife, settled at her small table with breathless excitement, bringing gossip along with her flower delivery. "News from the lowlands. You will not believe what the traders are saying." Ren continued grinding herbs, her movements steady despite the unease prickling at her spine. "I am sure I will hear regardless. The Alpha of Velmore. They say he has become a monster." The pestle slipped from Ren's fingers, clattering against the table. He has not smiled since last winter. Refuses to take a Luna, despite the council demanding he choose. Lady Corisanda has been promised to him for months, but he will not complete the bonding. Tamsin leaned forward, relishing the drama. They say the land itself is dying because the Alpha's heart is broken over some servant girl who was executed for treason. Executed. He thinks I am dead. The realization struck her with physical force. There is more, Tamsin added, her voice dropping to a whisper. Lady Corisande has grown impatient. She has issued a warrant for a fugitive, a woman who supposedly escaped justice last winter. Hunters have been sent to track her down. Ice spread through Ren's veins. The warrant claims this woman stole something precious from Velmore before she fled. The children. Somehow, she knows about the children. After Tamsin had gone, Ren moved to the window on trembling legs. The forest that ringed Thornwood had always felt like protection. Now it felt like a cage slowly closing. And then she heard a sound that stopped her heart completely. Howling. Not wild wolves. Not the village dogs. Pack wolves. Ren clutched her children tighter against her chest. They had found her. The howling grew closer with each passing heartbeat. Ren moved through her cottage with practiced efficiency, her healer's mind calculating even as terror clawed at her chest. She secured both twins in the woven sling she had fashioned for carrying them together, the fabric wrapped tight so their small bodies pressed warm against her heart. They did not cry. It was as if they sensed the danger, their infant instincts responding to their mother's fear with unnatural stillness. Their gray eyes watched her face with eerie calm. Through the window, dark shapes emerged from the tree line. Massive wolves, far larger than any natural animal. Their coats were dark, almost black, and their eyes gleamed with intelligence that no wild creature possessed. Pack wolves, hunters, 10, 15. A full hunting party encircling her cottage with military precision. The mark on her hip seared with sudden sharp pain, different from the constant burn she had grown accustomed to. This was urgent. Warning. Through the bond, something stirred. A presence, vast and dark, moving toward her with terrifying speed. A knock thundered against her door. Mistress Ren. A male voice, cold and official. By order of Lord Mavis and Lady Corisanda of Velmore, you are commanded to open this door. Ren backed toward the rear window, her arms wrapped protectively around the sling. We know you are inside. We have tracked you across 3 territories. Open willingly and we offer mercy. Resist, and we take what we came for, by force. What they came for. Not me. The twins. Her wolf surged beneath her skin, responding to the threat against her children with primal fury. Her eyes flickered amber. Her teeth ached with the need to lengthen into fangs. I am going to count to 5. 1. She unlatched the shutters with trembling fingers. 2. Cold autumn air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and approaching snow. And something else, something wild and familiar that made her pulse race. 3. A new howl split the air from the direction of the mountain pass. This one was different, deeper, more resonant. It carried harmonics that seemed to shake the very earth beneath Ren's feet, vibrating through her bones and into her soul. She knew that howl. 4. The wolves outside fell suddenly, eerily silent. 5. The door exploded inward, splinters of wood scattering across the floor like shrapnel. Ren spun toward the intruders, her body positioning itself between the shattered doorway and her children. But the wolves who burst through were not attacking. They were fleeing. 3 massive forms scrambled past her with wild, terrified eyes, their claws scraping against the wooden floor as they dove through the rear window. They squeezed through the narrow frame with desperate strength and vanished into the forest without looking back. Others followed within seconds, a stampede of dark fur and panicked whines, abandoning their careful formation as if death itself was pursuing them. Only one figure remained in her doorway, a man, older, his close-cropped hair more silver than black, his weathered face bearing scars that spoke of decades of combat. He wore the leather armor of Velmore's elite guard, but his hands were raised in a gesture of peace. "My lady." His voice was rough, strained with exhaustion. "Please, we have very little time." Ren's claws had already extended, her partial shift responding to the lingering threat. "Who are you?" "My name is Calder. I was first beta to Alpha Ridian." The name struck her like a physical blow. "You served the man who condemned me to death." "I serve the man who has been destroying himself trying to find you for 8 months." Calder's amber eyes dropped to the sling against her chest, where 2 small faces had emerged from the fabric. His breath caught audibly. "And who does not know his children exist?" Ren's claws retracted slowly. "Explain. Now." "The Alpha did not sentence you to exile. He did not sign any order. He did not even know there was a trial until it was already over." "I saw the parchment. His seal, forged by Lady Coruscant's allies on the council." Calder's jaw tightened with barely suppressed rage. "My lady, Ridian was drugged, a compound derived from wolfsbane, similar in effect to what the silver shackles did to suppress your wolf, but administered through his wine for 3 days. He was conscious but compliant, a puppet responding to whatever commands were given." The room tilted beneath Ren's feet. "When the drug finally cleared his system, he woke to find you gone. The council told him you had confessed to the poisoning, told him you had requested execution rather than face the shame of exile. The hooded woman in the courtyard, the blade falling. He thought he watched me die." "The howl," Ren breathed. "That night, he was watching what he believed was your death." Calder's voice cracked. "He has not been the same since. The bond between you was never broken, my lady. He feels you constantly. Alive, afraid, somewhere he cannot reach. It has been driving him toward madness." Her hand pressed against her hip, where the mark pulsed with renewed warmth. "He feels me. He has always felt me. And I felt his grief without understanding." "The hunters who just fled were sent by Coruscant," Calder continued. "When her spies reported that the fugitive healer had given birth, she understood immediately whose children they must be. Her orders are to eliminate you all before the Alpha can learn the truth." He withdrew a folded parchment from his armor, Coruscant's handwriting, elegant and damning. "The healer's location has been confirmed. By the next full moon, the Alpha's bastards will be eliminated, and he will have no choice but to accept our bond." His grief makes him pliable. The letter crumpled in Ren's fist. Outside, another howl sounded, much closer now, shaking leaves from the trees. "He is coming," Calder said, "but Coruscant's hunters will regroup. They will return with reinforcements before he arrives." Ren grabbed her cloak from its hook and wrapped it around herself and the twins. "Then we do not wait for rescue." She met the old warrior's startled gaze. "Take me to my mate." They made it 1/2 mile before the hunters found them. Ren heard them first, the crack of branches, the thunder of paws against frozen earth, and the low growls that seemed to come from every direction at once. "Behind me," Calder commanded, his body already shifting. The transformation was violent and fast, his human form dissolving into a massive gray wolf that positioned itself between Ren and the approaching danger. 2 other wolves emerged from the shadows. Calder's guards, she realized, loyal wolves who had accompanied him to Thornwood. But they were hopelessly outnumbered. The hunters poured from the tree line like a dark tide. 15, 20. More than she could count in the chaos of movement and snarling fury. And at their head, still in human form, walked a woman Ren would have recognized anywhere. Coruscant of House Thane. Her golden hair was pulled back in a severe braid, her traveling clothes were immaculate despite the journey, and her eyes, fixed on Ren with venomous triumph, held no pretense of the sorrowful friend she had played at the trial. "Did you really think you could run forever?" Corasande's voice was silk over steel. "Did you think I would let some common-born healer steal what belongs to me? Nothing about Rydian belongs to you." Ren's voice came out steadier than she felt. "You drugged him, manipulated him, built your power on lies and murder. I built my power on necessity." Corisande stopped 10 paces away, her hunters forming a wall of muscle and teeth behind her. "Rydian was always meant to be mine. The council arranged our union before either of us could walk. And then you appeared, a nobody with pretty eyes and healing hands, and suddenly he could see no one else. Because we are true mates, the bond chose us." "The bond is an inconvenience." Corasande's lip curled. 8 months, and still he refuses to touch me. Still he withers away, waiting for a ghost who refuses to die properly. Her gaze dropped to the sling against Ren's chest. "But ghosts do not bear children, and when I bring him your body, along with the corpses of the bastards you whelped, he will finally understand that clinging to the past is pointless. You will not touch them. Kill her. Bring me the infants alive. I want Rydian to see them before they die." The hunters lunged. Calder met the first wave with savage fury, his jaws closing around a black wolf's throat before it could reach Ren. His 2 guards flanked him, forming a desperate defensive line. But there were too many. For every wolf they brought down, 3 more pressed forward. A hunter slipped past the line, its amber eyes fixed on the sling where the twins had begun to whimper. Something ancient erupted in Ren's chest. Amber light blazed from her body, brilliant as sunrise, warm as the first day of spring. It poured from her hands, her chest, and the mark on her hip that had burned for 8 months without relief. The lunging hunter was thrown backward as if struck by a giant's fist. 3 more followed, their dark bodies tumbling through the air to crash against trees and stones. They scrambled upright, whimpering, and fled into the forest without looking back. Ren stood at the center of a corona of radiance, her children pressed against her heart, her eyes blazing with amber fire. "I said you will not touch them." But the power was draining her faster than she could sustain it. She could feel it bleeding away, the warmth leaving her limbs, her vision beginning to blur at the edges. Calder was down, his gray fur matted with blood from a dozen wounds. His guards had fallen. And Corasande's remaining hunters were circling closer, their initial fear giving way to predatory calculation. Corisande drew a blade from her belt, silver-edged, gleaming with malice. Fascinating, a healer with offensive capabilities. She advanced with deliberate steps. "Hold her down, I will do this myself." 3 hunters converged. Ren's light flickered and dimmed. "Rydian," she thought desperately, pouring everything she had left into the bond. "Rydian, please." The mark on her hip exploded with answering heat, and the forest detonated. A wolf, the color of midnight, burst from the shattered tree line, eyes blazing silver white, massive body moving with a speed that defied belief. He hit the first hunter without slowing, jaws closing, neck snapping, body discarded in a single fluid motion. The second died before the first had touched the ground. The remaining hunters scattered in mindless terror. The black wolf turned to Ren, to the children against her heart. Then he was shifting, his massive form dissolving into the shape of the man she had loved, lost and mourned for 8 endless months. Rydian stood before her, chest heaving, winter storm eyes filled with tears. "Seren," he breathed. No one had called her by her true name since the night she fled. "Rydian." Her voice broke on the word. His hand reached out, trembling, hovering over her cheek. "They told me you were dead. They made me watch. I know. I know now. I did not know then. I thought you had... never." His forehead pressed against hers. Never, Seren. A small cry interrupted them. Ridian went rigid. His gaze dropped to the sling, where two tiny faces had emerged. Two pairs of silver-flecked gray eyes stared up at him. Seren. Are they yours? She shifted the sling so he could see them clearly. Our son. Our daughter. His hand reached toward them, then stopped. May I? They have been waiting for their father. He lifted his son with shaking hands. The boy's fist closed around a strand of dark hair, and his cries faded to curious silence. The Alpha King of Velmore began to weep. A scream of rage shattered the moment. Coruscanta had not fled with her hunters. She lunged, not toward Ridian, but toward the daughter still in the sling against Ren's chest. Ren moved without thought. Her body twisted, shielding her daughter with her own flesh. The silver blade meant for the infant's heart plunged instead into Ren's shoulder, burying itself to the hilt. Pain exploded through her body like white fire. But she did not fall. Her hand closed around Coruscanta's wrist, grip tightening with strength that seemed to pour from somewhere beyond her physical form. The amber radiance roared back to life, blazing from her skin with blinding intensity. You have taken everything from me. Ren's voice carried harmonics that made the trees shudder. My home, my name, my mate. 8 months of my children's lives. The blade in her shoulder dissolved, not melted, but unmade, its silver turning to ash that scattered on the wind. And still you reach for more. She shoved Coruscanta backward with a force that sent the woman sprawling across the forest floor. The radiance faded. Ren's legs buckled beneath her. But before she could fall, arms caught her. Strong arms, familiar arms. I have you, Ridian said against her ear. I am here. The twins were safe in Calder's arms. The old beta had dragged himself upright despite his wounds, cradling both infants against his bloodied chest with fierce determination. Coruscanta. Ridian's voice dropped to something cold and terrible. You will answer for what you have done. I did what was necessary. Enough. He passed Ren gently to Calder's care, then stalked toward Coruscanta with predatory grace. You drugged me. You fabricated evidence against my mate. You convinced me I watched her die. When you discovered my children existed, you sent hunters to murder them. His hand dropped to the blade at his hip. Ridian, wait. Ren's voice stopped him. She deserves death, but not here. Not in Shadows, where her allies can claim she was murdered without trial. Take her back to Velmore. Let the pack witness her judgment. For a long moment, Ridian did not move. Then he sheathed the blade. Chain her. She travels under heavy guard. If she attempts escape, kill her. 2 of Calder's wolves materialized from the tree line and seized Coruscanta's arms with rough efficiency. Ridian returned to Ren's side, his hand hovering over the wound in her shoulder. You took a blade meant for our daughter. I would take 1,000 blades for them. For you. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. I thought you had abandoned me, but even believing that, I could not stop loving you. His forehead pressed against hers. I am sorry I could not protect you. You were as much a victim as I was. We were both betrayed. Their daughter began to fuss, the particular cry that meant hunger. Despite everything, Ren laughed softly. Someone has her father's impatience. I have missed so much. Then we will waste no more time. She pressed his hand over her heart. Take us home. They traveled through the night. Ridian carried her himself, her body cradled against his chest, their children secured in the sling between them. The warmth of his arms, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It felt like waking from a nightmare she had not realized she was trapped in. Tell me about them, he said softly. Tell me everything I missed. So Ren told him. She told him about the boy's first cry, so strong it had startled the midwife into dropping her instruments. About the girl's terrifying silence in the moments after birth, the stillness before she finally drew breath and wailed with all the fury of a storm. She told him about sleepless nights nursing two hungry mouths, about the first time they gripped her fingers, about the way their eyes had turned from newborn blue to silver-flecked gray within weeks. "I named them Caden and Ilara," she said, "spirit of battle, and the moon that watched over my labor. They are perfect. They are loud and demanding." She smiled against his chest. "They are the only reason I survived." "I felt them through the bond," Rydian admitted. "I did not understand what I was sensing, but there were moments of something pure, something that calmed my wolf when nothing else could. They carry your magic. The boy has my healing gift. The girl has something stronger." They walked in comfortable silence until Rydian spoke again. "The pack suffered while you were gone. Crops failed. Wolves grew feral. The bond between alpha and mate connects to the land itself. When I believed you were dead, that connection shattered. Everything felt your grief. I went to your old cottage every night, held the dress you wore the first time I kissed you." His voice cracked. "I should have announced you the moment I recognized what we were. Then Corisande would have found another way." Ren pulled his face down to hers. "We will waste no more time." She kissed him. Soft at first, tentative, two people relearning each other. But when the bond roared to life between them, desperate and consuming, the kiss became something else. A promise. A homecoming. When they broke apart, Rydian's eyes had shifted to molten silver. "Soon," he promised roughly. "Soon," she agreed. For the first time in 8 months, the word felt like truth. They reached the borders of Velmore at dawn. The land Ren remembered was nothing like what lay before her. Hills brown and barren, forests sickly, leaves falling too early. The river reduced to a sluggish trickle reflecting gray sky. The bond's fracture affected everything, Rydian said grimly. They crested the final hill, and Ren's heart seized in her chest. Smoke rose from the capital. The streets were empty, windows shuttered. And above the castle gates, where the Alpha's banner should have flown, hung the silver serpent of House Thane. "Impossible," Calder growled. "We arrested her supporters before we left." "She had more allies than we knew." Rydian's jaw tightened. "And the guards transporting her were ambushed 2 days ago. She escaped." Ren felt ice spread through her stomach. She planned for this. A contingency in case her hunters failed. A rider emerged from the distant gates, galloping toward them at reckless speed, one of Rydian's scouts. "My Alpha." Lady Corisande's forces struck at midnight. The castle fell within hours. She has taken 43 hostages, including the old healer Morna. Execution at noon if you attempt to retake the castle by force. Morna, the woman who had trained Ren, treated her like a daughter. "Corisande specifically requested that you be informed of Morna's presence," the scout added reluctantly. "She said you would understand the message." Ren understood perfectly. "Come for your mentor, and I will kill her in front of you." She looked at the sky, hours until noon. "Rydian, I have an idea." She met his eyes steadily. "You will not like it. If it involves putting yourself in danger, it involves ending this. Today." She told him her plan. He liked it even less than she had predicted. But when she explained the alternative, a prolonged siege while innocents died one by one, he finally, reluctantly, agreed. "Calder will stay with the children at a safe distance," Rydian said. "Outside the city walls with a full guard. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong." Ren touched his face. "Trust me." The castle gates loomed before Ren like the jaws of a beast. She walked toward them alone, her healer's robes replaced by a simple white dress marking her as a supplicant. Her hands were empty. Her shoulders still ached where Corisande's blade had pierced her. And her children were safe with Calder, a mile behind her, surrounded by every wolf loyal to the true Alpha. The guards at the gate leveled their spears. "I am Seren," she said steadily. "Lady Corisanda has been hunting me for 8 months. I am here to surrender." They led her through empty streets to the great hall. 43 hostages knelt along the walls, bound and gagged. Ren's eyes found Morna immediately, white hair tangled, face bruised, but eyes blazing with defiance. "The ghost returns." Corisande descended the dais in silver and white. "I did not expect surrender after that display in the forest. I am not here to fight. I am offering a trade, my life, for theirs." "How noble." Corisande circled her slowly. "But where are the children?" "Safe. Beyond your reach." "Nothing is beyond my reach." Corisande gestured toward a window. "Did you think I would not know the moment Rydian crossed into Velmore? He is surrounded as we speak, outnumbered. And when my wolves bring him down, they have orders to take the children alive." Ren crossed to the window despite herself. Through the glass, she could see the southern hills. Chaos. Dark wolves pouring from tree lines. Rydian's smaller force struggling to hold formation. At the center, his massive black wolf protecting Calder and 2 small bundles. They found them. Despite everything, they found them. No. Something inside her shattered completely. The power she had touched in the forest, the amber radiance, had been a fraction of what she truly possessed. She understood that now. She had been suppressing her gift her entire life, afraid of being called unnatural. She was not afraid anymore. Light exploded from her body, not gentle warmth. Something primal, ancient, resonating with the bones of the earth itself. Windows shattered outward, walls cracked. Guards were thrown backward, weapons dissolving to ash. "What are you doing?" Corisanda stumbled. "What I should have done 8 months ago." Ren's voice carried harmonics that made stones vibrate. "I am done hiding, done letting others decide whether I am worthy to exist." She raised her hands. The hostages' chains dissolved like morning frost. "I am Seren, true maid of Alpha Rydian, mother of his heirs, and I am something you never understood." The light coalesced into wolf shape, not flesh but pure radiance, incandescent, blinding. "I am the Luna, and I am taking back what is mine." She leaped through the shattered window. The light wolf carried her across the distance in 3 heartbeats. She landed among Corisande's forces like a meteor, scattering wolves in every direction. They fled screaming, not from pain, but recognition. The old legend spoke of wolves blessed by the moon itself, power to heal or destroy, once in a generation. Luna, not a title, a species. She found Rydian at the center of chaos, black fur matted with blood, body positioned protectively over Calder and the children. Seren. Later. "Now we finish this." Together, they turned to face the remaining enemies. The battle was over in minutes. The great hall of Velmore had been cleansed of Thane banners by the time the sun reached its peak. Ren stood at its center in ceremonial Luna robes, deep blue embroidered with silver moons. The scent of cedar smoke and crushed pine filled the air, remnants of the ritual purification. Through the tall windows, golden light streamed across the ancient stones, warming her skin. The power had settled back into the quiet space beneath her heart. But she could feel it now. A constant presence, a promise of strength she could call upon whenever her family needed protection. Around her, hundreds of wolves had gathered. Every soul who remained loyal, bolstered by dozens more who had switched allegiances the moment they understood what had happened. Their combined presence filled the hall with warmth and the low hum of anticipation. At the hall's far end, bound in chains of blessed silver, knelt Corisanda of House Thane. The accused has been found guilty of treason, attempted murder, and conspiracy against the crown. Lord Mavis read the verdict, his voice stripped of its former coldness. "The council unanimously recommends execution." Ridian stepped forward, and the hall fell silent. He looked different than he had 8 months ago. Older. Harder. But when his gaze found Ren across the hall, his expression softened with tenderness that made her heart ache. Coruscanda of House Thane. He turned to face the prisoner. "You drugged me, exiled my mate, convinced me I watched her die. Let me believe for 8 months that I had lost half my soul." He drew his blade, steel singing against leather. "But my Luna has asked for mercy." Coruscandi's eyes snapped open. "You are sentenced to permanent exile beyond all allied territories. Your name will be struck from House Thane's records. Your wolf will be bound, preventing you from ever shifting again. You will live out your remaining years as a human, stripped of everything you were." Coruscanda was led away without struggle. Whatever fire had driven her cruelty seemed to have burned out entirely. "Now," Lord Mavis announced, "the Alpha will complete the bonding with his true mate." Ridian approached Ren across the hall. With each step she felt the bond between them pulse stronger, a golden thread connecting heart to heart. He stopped before her and took her hands in his. "Before the old gods and the witness of our pack," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent hall, "I claim you as my mate, my Luna, my equal in all things." "Before the old gods and the witness of our pack," she answered, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "I claim you as my mate, my Alpha, my heart's true home." He tilted his head, baring his throat in the ancient gesture of submission. She understood what he was offering: trust, vulnerability, a piece of himself that would belong to her forever. Her teeth sank into the juncture of his neck and shoulder. The bond exploded between them. Images flooded her mind, his memories, his emotions. 8 months of suffering laid bare. She saw herself through his eyes, a blazing light that had given his existence meaning. She felt his desperation when he woke from the drugged haze, his shattered grief when the blade fell on the woman he believed was her. His relentless search, night after night, refusing to accept that she was gone. And she let him see her in return. The fear, the loneliness. The moment she first felt their children move inside her and understood that love could create miracles. The nights she had lain awake with her hands on her belly, whispering stories about the father they would never know. When she finally released him, they were both weeping. Around them, the wolves of Velmore lifted their voices in a howl of celebration that shook the ancient rafters. 3 months later, spring had returned to Velmore. The fields that had withered under the weight of a fractured bond now burst with new growth, green shoots pushing through dark soil. The forests had recovered their vitality, filled with birdsong and rustling leaves. The river ran strong and clear, carrying snowmelt down from mountains that gleamed white against brilliant blue sky. And in the royal nursery, 2 children were taking their first steps. "Caden? No, not the curtains." Ren lunged to intercept her son before he could pull down the expensive fabric. The boy laughed with delighted mischief, his gray eyes sparkling with inherited stubbornness. Across the room, Alara sat quietly with her father, her small hands pressed against his face as she studied him with unnerving intensity. "She is reading me again," Ridian said, half amused and half unsettled. "I can feel her in my mind. She wants to understand everything about you. She understands more than any child her age should. She is not any child." Ren settled beside them with Caden squirming in her arms. "Neither of them are." Ridian's arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For surviving. For protecting them when I could not. For coming back to me. We both made mistakes, but we found our way back." She leaned against his shoulder. "That is what matters." He pressed his forehead to hers. I want forever with you, Seren. Whatever challenges come, I want to face them by your side. You do not have to earn my love, you already have it. In her arms, Caden reached for his father. Ilara climbed into her mother's lap. 4 souls, bound together by love and magic and a bond nothing would ever break. Outside the nursery window, the wolves of Velmore began to howl, not in grief, in joy. In celebration of an Alpha and Luna whose love had healed a broken land, the pack had come to destroy her. Instead, they found the Alpha's pups curled against her heart, and he claimed her as Luna. Forever. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.